All right, you ready for this? Get set for the full breakdown of this weekend's London Derby, Arsenal versus Chelsea. Wow, you guys sent in a ton of articles, predictions. You really want to know it all, huh? And believe me, we found some interesting stuff.
It's not just any derby, is it? I mean, you got Arsenal trying to get back in that title race, and then there's Chelsea, they're battling for a Champions League spot. This match, it could really change things, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But first, where can everyone watch?
Kicks off at 4:30 p.m. GMT this Sunday, March 16th. At the Emirates, of course. Sky Sports' main event, their Premier League channel, and Ultra HDR will all have it. Or you can stream it, if that's easier, on Sky Go.
Okay, so plenty of ways to tune in. Let's talk about what's at stake here. What does a win or a loss really mean for each team?
For Arsenal, well, they need to show they're still a threat. Being 15 points behind Liverpool, it's got to be tough, especially after those last few matches. A good win against Chelsea, that would send a message, not just to their rivals, but to the whole league.
A big confidence boost for sure. What about Chelsea? They feeling the pressure to close that gap?
Absolutely, yeah. Champions League qualification, that's the goal for them. 3 points behind Arsenal, that puts them right on the edge. But a win here, that puts them in a much better spot. This isn't about just, bragging rights. It's about their future in the Champions League.
High stakes all around then. Okay, let's dive into the team news. What's the lineup looking like for Arsenal? Any surprises Arteta might be cooking up?
Well, looks like Arteta's planning some changes after that midweek Champions League game. Timber, Saliba, Nwaneri, Ødegaard, and Trossard. They're all expected back in the starting 11.
Bringing back the big guns, but there's always casualties, right? Who's out for the Gunners?
The injury list
Yeah.
is a bit long, unfortunately. Saka, Havertz, Gabriel Jesus, they're all out. That leaves their attack looking pretty thin.
Ouch, losing that kind of firepower is rough. And then there's the Raheem Sterling situation, right?
All right, the loan. He can't play against his parent club, so Sterling will be watching from the sidelines.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having to root against your own teammates?
Yeah, that's gotta be weird. Anyone else on the Arsenal side we should be watching?
I've got my eye on young Ethan Nwaneri. If he scores, he'll be the youngest player ever to score in a Premier League London derby. Talk about a story.
Wow, that's some pressure. All right, let's switch gears and talk about Chelsea. What's the latest on their squad?
Chelsea's got their own injury woes. Jackson, Guiu, Madwek, and Kellyman. They're all expected to miss the match.
So both sides are banged up a bit. With those missing players, how do you think Maresca will approach this tactically?
Well, on top of the injuries, Manatrix out too, suspended, makes things even trickier. They might have to rely on players like Cole Palmer, just back from illness, to create some chances.
It sounds like their attack might be vulnerable, especially without Mudryk, who's in goal for them.
It's confirmed. Robert Sanchez starts in goal for Chelsea. All eyes will be on him, especially after some, shall we say, less than stellar performances lately.
Yeah, one mistake in a match like this could be fatal. Any hints of tactical surprises from Maresca? Anything up his sleeve?
Well, the rumor is that Reece James, usually a defender, might be playing midfield. Could be a genius move or a total flop. Who knows?
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. Okay, we've got the when and where, the stakes, the team news. Let's get to the fun part. What are the experts predicting?
The Standard is going with a 2-1 win for Arsenal. They think even with the injuries, home advantage, and Arteta's tactics will give them the edge.
Interesting. Any other bold predictions out there?
The Independent also thinks Arsenal will win, but they say watch out for Chelsea's defense. It's shaky. So they think both teams will score.
Sounds like it could be a high-scoring match. Anyone predicting an upset?
Racing Post is going against the grain. They say it'll be a low-scoring tactical game, under 2.5 goals. Both teams haven't been scoring much lately, so they think it'll be a tight one.
So maybe a nail-biter. Both sides seem to have some baggage coming into this one. What about Paul Merson? What's the former Arsenal player saying about this clash?
Well, Merson's backing his old team, naturally. He predicts a 2-0 win for Arsenal pretty comfortably. He says Chelsea's recent performances against, well, weaker teams have been uninspiring.
Mixed bag of predictions so far. What are the bookies saying?
Betfair has Arsenal as the favorites, 45 odds. A draw is 114, and a Chelsea win is a long shot at 72.
Yeah, those odds definitely reflect the general feeling, but you never know with a derby. Okay, before we get into the historical side of things, I'm curious. Are there any specific weaknesses in Chelsea's defense that you think Arsenal could exploit?
That's a good question. Looking at the recent matches, it seems like their transitions are the problem. When they lose the ball, they're slow to get back into formation. And a team like Arsenal, with their fast wingers, that's where they could really cause trouble.
So speed and precision on the counterattack, that could be the key for Arsenal. All right, let's talk history. This rivalry, man, it's seen some legendary moments. What kind of historical baggage are these teams bringing onto the pitch?
One stat really jumped out at me. Get this. Arsenal hasn't lost back-to-back Premier League London derbies at home, get this, since they moved to Emirates Stadium in 2006.
Wow, that's almost 20 years of dominance. But wait, didn't they just lose to West Ham at home?
Yeah, we did, which makes this match even more interesting, right? Can Arsenal bounce back, protect their home turf, or is this a sign that their home advantage is fading?
Ooh, good point. The pressure is on. Any other interesting historical tidbits that could affect this match?
The Independent and Racing Post both mentioned that both teams, they've been struggling to score lately. So yeah, it could be a low-scoring, tense game.
So it might all come down to one moment of brilliance, a mistake, or just plain luck.
Exactly. And one more thing, just to add to the drama, Chelsea hasn't beaten Arsenal since August 2021.
Seriously, that's a long time. The pressure on Chelsea to end that streak has got to be huge.
Oh, you know it is. It's not just about form right now. It's about overcoming those mental hurdles, proving they can still compete at the top.
Man, this match is shaping up to be something else. Arsenal trying to get back on track. Chelsea trying to break. Plus all that historical drama. It's going to be wild.
Absolutely. But before we go any further, there's something I'm curious about.
What's that?
We haven't really talked about the fans. How do you think the atmosphere at the Emirates, how do you think that could play a role?
Good point. The Emirates can be intimidating for visiting teams, right? It's loud, it's passionate. The Arsenal fans will be going crazy for a win.
Yeah. It could be like a 12th man for Arsenal, pushing them forward, maybe even rattling Chelsea.
Yeah.
Or maybe the pressure gets to the players and they make mistakes. It's a mind game, for sure.
Definitely. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive even deeper into the tactics of this London derby. Stay with us.
It's going to be a real tactical battle, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So let's talk about tactics. We know both teams haven't been scoring a ton of goals lately, but what about that Chelsea defense? Are there any weak spots you think Arsenal could exploit?
Well, the Independent, they made a good point about Chelsea's transitions. When they lose the ball, they're slow getting back into position. That could be a problem against Arsenal. Those wingers are fast. They could cause some real damage.
True, but Arsenal needs serious firepower. No Saka, no Havertz, no Jesus. Can they really take advantage of those defensive lapses?
It's a classic matchup, right?
Yeah.
Arsenal's weak attack versus Chelsea's weak defense. Will Arteta play it safe, or will he
If I were Arteta, I'd focus on getting goals first, especially after that.
defensive performance would give Arsenal a lot of confidence. For Chelsea, I bet the rest will be really careful too. They know Arsenal is dangerous at home, even without their best attackers.
So, a real chess match then, both managers trying to outsmart each other. You mentioned earlier that Paul Merson is predicting a 2-0 win for Arsenal. Easy peasy. Do you think that's realistic?
I mean, Merson knows Arsenal well, but I wonder if he's not giving Maresca enough credit.
True, Maresca has brought something new to Chelsea. What if those recent Chelsea wins, even though they weren't blowouts, what if that means they're starting to gel under his leadership?
That's definitely possible. That's what makes this match so hard to predict. Two teams still figuring things out, two managers with different styles, and, of course, all that history between them.
Speaking of history, that stat about Arsenal's home record against London rivals, that's pretty incredible. Almost 20 years without losing 2 in a row at the Emirates. That's got to be in the back of Chelsea's minds, right?
Oh, absolutely. History and momentum, those are powerful things in football. Sometimes it feels like the pressure can either lift a team up or crush them completely.
Like there's a whole other story going on beneath the surface, adding to the tension.
Exactly. This brings us back to something we talked about earlier. Individual brilliance.
Right. Even with all the tactics and planning, sometimes it just comes down to one amazing play from a single player.
Exactly. You've got brilliant minds on the sidelines, but out on the pitch, it could be a moment of magic from a Martinelli or a Palmer that changes everything.
That's what makes football so great, isn't it? It's strategy, it's skill, it's psychology, and yeah, a little bit of luck too. You never know what will decide the game.
Absolutely. There's this one thing in the articles that really caught my eye. It was about Reece James.
Oh, yeah. What about him?
Well, there's some debate about where he plays best. He's usually a defender, but Maresca has hinted he might put him in midfield for this match.
That's interesting. Do the articles say why Maresca would do something so drastic?
Sports Mole thinks Maresca sees James as more of a midfield enforcer. Maybe because he's such a strong tackler, good at breaking up plays. They think he might be the key to stopping Arsenal from controlling the midfield.
That's risky, could be brilliant, or it could backfire big time.
Exactly. And speaking of potential game changers, remember that young Ethan Nwaneri?
Yes. The one who could break the record.
Sports Mole reminded me, if he scores, he'll be the youngest player ever to score in a Premier League London derby. What a story that would be.
I can only imagine what the Emirates would sound like if that happened. It just shows you sometimes it's the young players, the ones with no fear, who make the biggest difference.
It's true. And speaking of pressure, both teams have a lot riding on this game. Arsenal needs to get back to winning. Chelsea wants to finally beat the Gunners.
Yeah.
How do you think those mental factors, how do you think that'll affect things out on the pitch?
I think it comes down to leadership from the managers and the senior players. Who can stay calm under pressure? Who can rally their teammates when things get tough?
You're right. This isn't just a test of tactics. It's a test of character. Who wants it more? Who can handle the heat of a London derby? Exactly. It's those things you can't measure. Mental toughness, resilience, the ability to come back from setbacks. Those are the things that often decide who wins a match like this.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It'll be really interesting to see who comes out on top, not just physically, but mentally too.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Before we move on, though, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. We've talked about individual stars, but what about the team spirit, the overall chemistry? How do you think that will affect the outcome?
Ooh, good question. I think it's about finding that balance between individual talent and playing together as a team.
Right. You need players who can do amazing things, but they also need to be willing to put the team first, to work together, to fight for each other.
Exactly. It's about having that shared belief, that unshakable bond that helps a team overcome any challenge.
And you can't forget the manager's role in building that unity. Arteta and Maresca, they'll both be trying to create that sense of togetherness, that belief that they can do something special as a team.
I think that's a great point. It'll be interesting to see which manager can motivate their players better, who can instill that belief and, lead their team to victory.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold on the pitch. There's one more historical angle I think we should talk about.
Okay, I'm listening.
This isn't just any London derby. It's a clash between two of the biggest, most historic clubs in English football. Think about their legacies, all the legendary players who came before, all the iconic moments that have defined this rivalry.
Wow, it's incredible. It must be pretty daunting for the players to walk onto that pitch knowing they're carrying all that history on their shoulders.
It's a huge responsibility, but it's also an honor, right?
Yeah.
To be part of something so much bigger than yourself, to add to a story that's been going on for over 100 years, that's got to be a special feeling.
Totally. It's about pride, it's about passion, it's about wanting to etch your name alongside all those legends who've played in this fixture.
And we can't forget the fans. They're the heart and soul of this rivalry. Their passion, their loyalty, their unwavering support, that's what makes these matches so special.
They create the atmosphere, the noise, the energy. They turn these games from ordinary matches into something truly epic. Okay, let's take a quick pause here and we'll be right back with even more analysis of this massive London derby. All right, we're back, ready to finish up our deep dive into this weekend's London derby. Covered a lot, but, there are always a few more tactical things to think about.
Yeah, for sure. With all this talk about star players and tactics, I think we haven't really talked enough about the home crowd.
That's true. What kind of atmosphere are we expecting at the Emirates, and how could that affect the game?
Well, Sportsmail brought up this really interesting stat. Arsenal hasn't lost 2 Premier League London derbies in a row at home, get this, since they moved to the Emirates back in 2006.
Wow, that's a tough place to play. Seems like the Emirates crowd can really make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. The home support can be so strong, pushing Arsenal forward, maybe even getting in Chelsea's heads a little. It's like having an extra player on the pitch.
But then again, Paul Merson said that Chelsea hasn't been playing well lately, even against weaker teams. If they're struggling against those teams, how will they do against a strong Arsenal side, even with the home crowd on their side?
That's the big question, isn't it? But derby matches, they're different. Form doesn't always matter as much when there's so much history, so much rivalry, so much passion.
True. Sometimes it's the team that has more to prove, the team with something to fight for that really steps up.
And in this case, that could be Chelsea. They'll want to prove that they can still compete with the best. And what better way to do that than to beat their rivals right there at the Emirates?
Yeah, that would definitely send a message. And we can't forget the mental side of things either. Chelsea hasn't beaten Arsenal in over 3 years. That's gotta be weighing on them, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Breaking through that mental barrier, that could be just as important as any tactic. Overcoming that mental hurdle, that might be the key to winning this match.
You know, thinking about all these tactics and the psychology, it makes me think about set pieces. They can really decide these close games, right?
Totally. A well-executed set piece can change the whole game in a second. And both Arsenal and Chelsea have players who are dangerous from those dead ball situations.
For Arsenal, you've got Ødegaard with his perfect passes, and then there's Gabriel, always a threat in the air.
And Chelsea's got Reece James, his free kicks and corners are dangerous. And of course, you can't forget Thiago Silva. He's always a threat in the air from set pieces.
So this could be a real battle of the minds between the managers, each one trying to outsmart the other on set pieces.
Definitely. And speaking of managers, we know Arteta loves that possession-based style. But do you think he'll stick with that, especially with Arsenal missing some of their attackers?
That's a tough one. He'll want to control the pace of the game, but he also has to be realistic. Maybe we'll see a more direct approach, focusing on those quick transitions to take advantage of Chelsea's weaknesses at the back.
Makes sense. As for Maresca, it's harder to say what he'll do. He's been flexible this season, but he always seems to focus on a strong defense.
Yeah, they've been tough to score against. But can they turn that defense into goals?
That's the challenge, isn't it? They've got to figure out how to break down Arsenal's defense while still staying organized and disciplined at the back.
It looks like it's going to be a really interesting tactical battle. And then there's that wild card. Reece James may be playing midfield.
Yeah, that's right. That's a bold move by Maresca,
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see if it works. Will it give Chelsea more control in the midfield? Or will it make their attack weaker?
I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I think we've covered pretty much everything we can without actually watching the match.
We've gone over tactics, psychology, history. You even talked about how the crowd and set pieces could affect things.
We really went deep. But before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought.
Okay, what is it?
When you watch this match, remember that it's more than just a game. It's kind of like a reflection of life itself.
It's deep. What do you mean?
Well, think about it. You've got these two teams, both fighting to win, each with their own strengths, their own weaknesses, their own game plan. There are moments of brilliance, moments of frustration, moments of victory, and moments of defeat. Just like in life, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean. There are unexpected turns, things to overcome, and in the end, you realize that success usually comes from hard work, determination, and maybe a little bit of luck too.
And we can't forget about teamwork, communication, good leadership. Nobody achieves greatness on their own. It takes everyone working together, having a shared goal, believing in something bigger than themselves.
Well said. So when you're watching this London Derby, remember, it's not just a game. It's a little piece of life with all its ups and downs, challenges, and rewards.
Take in the excitement, savor those big moments, and enjoy how beautiful the game can be.
And no matter who you're rooting for, remember that we all love this sport. That's what brings us together.
Let's celebrate the beautiful game. And may this London Derby show us what it means to compete, to strive for greatness, and to be united by our love of football.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Arsenal versus Chelsea London Derby. We hope you enjoyed listening, and we'd love for you to keep talking about it with us on social media.
Let us know what you think, what you predict will happen, and your reactions to the match.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the passion for this amazing sport alive.